Hello. Hi,
Hi.
Maryam. Hi, Kimya.
Hello.
Thank you so much, both of you, for being here with us today on this Friday for a really important conversation. I see a bunch of people joining on, which is so thrilling. Thank you, everyone who's tuning in. We'll just kind of settle here for a few moments as we let folks join on and kind of notify that we're beginning here. All right. Hello, everyone. Maryam and Kimya, thank you for being here today with us. We really appreciate it.
It's my
Thank you.
pleasure.
Thank you
Yeah,
for having us. Excited
absolutely.
to have this conversation with you again.
Yes. All too important, all too urgent. And great. I see some more people joining on. That's so exciting. I'm just going to hold us here for just another few moments while we let people get in and get settled. Um, yeah, here we are. Here we are. So, for those of you just tuning in, we're going to be doing this incredible conversation with Maryam and Kimya to talk about immigration restrictions and the implications for many different people in many different industry sectors, life experiences, but particularly for people working in the arts. And we're going to be talking about how complicated some of the new restrictions are and how kind of we're missing a kind of more mainstream, high level, public, comprehensive understanding of what's going on. So we want to try to kind of build more public understanding, more relationship to this. So I don't know if Kimia and Maryam, there's anything else you guys want to kind of throw in here. I think maybe we'll just vamp for just like one more minute as we let people sign on.
Yeah, we can just wait. We can
Okay.
wait if yeah.
I'm still having coffee.
Me
It's
too.
but you're 3 hours behind.
That's true. That's true.
My goodness. Coffee hour with Kimia and Maryam. Very special, special morning. Yeah.
Lee, I was also thinking, once this is recorded and posted, I know there's a lot of organization that will benefit from hearing this organization from this information that may not be able to be on today with us live. So we can always send the link as well to
Absolutely.
all of those as a follow up.
Absolutely. We'll be sending the link and we'll be inviting people to join in coalition with a bunch of organizations that Kimia is helping to organize to be part of some really important advocacy work around this issue. So, yeah. Um, well, I think maybe we can go ahead and kind of get started with the conversation. And as kind of the group keeps coalescing, I will kind of jump in and just do another little quick moment of context as I kind of monitor who's coming in. So, again, thank you to everyone who just joined in. We're going to jump into a conversation about immigration restrictions for people who are trying to get access to come into the United States for a bunch of different reasons, and for some people who are here and will be coming up for renewals in different parts of their immigration processes. And so I'm going to turn it over to the incredible Maryam and Kimia to kind of lead this conversation.
Thank you so much, Lee, and nice to see everybody. Before we dive in, just want to introduce myself. I'm an Iranian Canadian American immigrant, so this topic is, dear to my heart. And Kimio, do you want to just quickly introduce yourself before we jump in, and then I can ask
Sure.
you some questions.
Yeah, hi, I'm Kimya Zahedi. I'm an immigration attorney in New York, and I focus mainly or my specialty is artist visas and temporary visas for performers.
Awesome. And Kimmy and I are both on the board of Waterwell as well. So I just wanted to introduce ourselves. So thank you so much for being here. We're excited to dive into this really complex and complicated topic. But before we start, I just want to disclaim that the information we do provide today should not be taken as specific legal advice, which can only really be given regarding the circumstances of a case. We will be giving you the best information we have, or Kimya has at hand right now, and you should feel invited to follow up with her after this, or her law firm, Covey Law, or any other immigration attorney for your specific case. If we don't answer your questions on this IG Live, but please do feel free to put your questions in the comments as well throughout the IG Live. So Kimya, there's been a lot of changes to immigration visa restrictions, especially over the last several months. Can you please kick us off with telling us a little bit about these changes and walking us through the banned countries?
Yes. So I'm just going to start by saying, and I said this at the last live, but it's important that we're going to be talking about this in legal terms and in a pretty, dry and just straight to the point way. And it's just worth noting that the issues that we're talking about are really impacting people's lives in ways that I cannot grasp in this, or I won't be able to convey in this IG Live. It is so unbelievably devastating, the kind of breadth and impact of these policies. But nonetheless, I'm going to talk about them in legal terms, and then maybe at the end we can sort of get to how these policies affect arts and culture, and the community of artists that we are talking to here. So there are many, many different ways in which the U.S. government is currently trying to limit and discourage foreign nationals from being able to travel to the U.S. So there are many different ways that affects arts and culture. Today, we're going to talk about 3 different actions that are affecting U.S. travel by foreigners, performers, artists, in 3 different ways. So the first one is a number of executive orders that have been issued to ban citizens of certain nations from receiving visas in their passports. These executive orders have come to be known colloquially. Wow. As though I forgot. Anyway, colloquially, sorry, as the travel bans. And people are familiar with those because they were around in the first Trump administration in the first Trump term. So it's an extension of those same exact policies, just a bit expanded. And the second policy that we're going to discuss are a pause by USCIS that was initiated this past December of 2025 on all immigration benefits. So every type of visa or immigration application that you can imagine for individuals from those same 40 countries, as well as individuals born in those 40 countries. This has a much broader, much wider implications, much wider pool of people that it captures, and is not, for whatever reason, really being discussed that much in the mainstream conversation right now. And the third one that we'll discuss is the general hardships and difficulties in obtaining a visa that are new as of the last couple of years. It's become more expensive. It's become more difficult in a variety of different ways. So to kick it off, we'll start with the first of these 3 topics, and that is the travel bans. So basically, to give some context, because people are not that familiar with the very, very complex process that goes into getting a visa. But there are generally 2 steps to obtaining a visa. The first is applying for a petition with USCIS, and you can do that from within the country if you're already here with status, or you can do that from outside of the country. The second is for people who apply outside of the country to obtain a visa stamp in their passport. To do that, you need to schedule an interview at a U.S. consulate or embassy abroad, generally in your country of residence or nationality. The travel ban restricts individuals from being able to receive that visa at their interview. So the first one is the full travel ban. That includes 20 countries, including Iran, Haiti, Somalia, Syria, Afghanistan, and others. And it prevents nationals of those countries from getting a U.S. visa stamp in their passport, no matter what kind of visa they're applying for, whether it's a green card, an O visa, a student visa. It's all different kinds of visas that it restricts. So, for example, I am an Iranian musical group or theater group, and or an individual, an Iranian individual, who is applying for temporary work visa to come perform at U.S. cities across the country. I can apply for the first step. I can submit a petition with USCIS. It could have been approved prior to December 2025. And if I were to schedule an interview and go to the US Embassy in Dubai to get my visa, I would not be able to obtain the visa. So that is how the full travel ban affects individuals on the 20 country list. The second travel ban is a partial ban. So it affects individuals from 20 countries, 20 other countries, including Cuba, Venezuela, Nigeria, and Senegal, from obtaining certain kinds of US visas, specifically immigrant visas, so that's green cards, tourist visas, and student visas. So it's not as broad as the first one. The last one is a travel ban that only affects immigrant visas. So that's green cards and applications for permanent residence. And that list of countries is 75 countries long. This is a new policy that has just been introduced in the last couple of months. While the country list is very long and much longer than the other two, which are 20 countries respectively, those individuals from those 75 countries are being prevented from obtaining a more limited type of visa. It's just immigrant visas, so people who intend to, who are applying for permanent residence.
Kimya, can I just jump in and ask one specific question regarding that? That's depending on where they're born, right? So if they're born in that country, but they have citizenship elsewhere, like a Canadian citizen that was born in Iran, that would apply to them as well, correct?
No, so the travel bans actually do not take into account where you're born. They take into account your nationality. So this is a good question. Who is not impacted by these bans? Dual nationals who have two passports, one from a travel ban country, one from a non-banned country, are still under these policies able to apply for their visa and an interview using their non-travel ban country passport.
Got it. Okay.
Yes. So if you, were Iranian French and had a approved petition, that first step, prior to December 2025, and I'll get to that in a second, you could use your French passport to apply for your visa.
Okay, got it. So for this is specifically for the travel restrictions.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
It's confusing. It should actually be called a visa ban because it bans the actual visa stamp. It prevents you from obtaining the visa stamp, but it's called the travel ban. But yes, I hope that helps clarify.
Yeah, that clears it up. Thank you.
Yeah, and there are some exceptions. In the first Trump term, attorneys were successful in applying for national interest waivers for several individuals, and essentially making the argument that certain individuals not being able to come to the U.S. does not serve our national interests. It makes U.S. Organizations face a lot of financial loss, and there were certain ways that we were able to argue that in the first term. People are giving it a shot. And there's another important group that is not affected by these, or that wasn't affected by these policies, I should say, until December 2025, and that was individuals who were already within the US. So if you were already within the US, you had a valid O or P visa, you were a performer from Iran, or you were a performer from any of the other 20 fully banned countries, you could apply to renew or extend your visa without having to leave the country and re-interview. In which case, these travel bans would not capture you. They wouldn't affect you. You were able to apply for an extension of status as long as you remained in the U.S. without having to interview. Those people are now unfortunately affected by a new set of policies that I can get into now.
Okay.
So the new set of policies affects the first step of the visa process. And I described that at the beginning, but I'll reiterate it now. The first step is usually to apply to USCIS with a petition. And the second step, if you're outside of the US, is to apply for an interview, and that's where you receive your actual visa stamp. For individuals who are already in the States, if you are applying to renew, extend, change status, etc., you're here on valid status already, you can apply to USCIS, submit a petition, and just stay here once that's and remain here. And once it's approved, you have work authorization, etc. So this new policy, I'm going to read this part because I want to make sure that I say it as directly and succinctly as possible. So, as a result of two USCIS policy memos issued in December and January of this year, so December and January 2026, USCIS is now instructed to pause or hold all pending immigration benefit applications for individuals from the 20 fully banned countries, the 20 partially banned countries, so that's 40 countries total, as well as individuals born in those 40 countries. And this is a different group of people than what we described earlier. So the travel ban, well, I'll say this, the hold means that petitions or requests filed by individuals from those 40 countries or born in those, with nationality from those 40 countries, so citizenship, passports, or born in those 40 countries, their applications for whatever immigration benefit they're applying for. So that's a temporary work visa, that's a student visa, that's a change of status, an extension of status, adjustment of status, that's for any visa classification. Those people will not receive a final decision. So they will not receive an approval. They will not receive a denial. They won't receive any decision. That petition will just be pending indefinitely as long as this policy is in place. So this is huge. I mean, I cannot overstate how huge this is. It affects individuals who have absolutely no ties to any of the the 40 travel ban countries. For example, individuals who were born in a country like Iran, who left when they were 2 months old, who have absolutely no ties to that country whatsoever, are Canadian, for example, or French, and are already in the States, have had a visa classification several times, have gone through this process many times, work for a U.S. employer, gone to school here. Those individuals, when they are applying for a renewal, let's say their O visa, for example, expires in 2027, as long as this policy is in place, they will not be able to receive an approval, which means that they will have to leave.
Kimya, this is also for green card holders as well.
Well, anyone who has an existing green card, no. But if you are applying for a green card, and I know that you were interested in applying for green cards for your parents, for example, who, I mean, you can speak to this, but are Canadian citizens, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, the question is kind of two-pronged. One is I have friends who are green card holders right now in the US, and I actually was a green card holder for 10 years, and my renewal came up, and I applied for my US citizenship last year during the Biden administration, or sorry, in 2024 and my application did get approved, and I am now an American citizen, and I'm dual, right? But I'm saying if that was my situation right now today, that I had a renewal, because your green card does expire after 10 years, would I have been approved for my renewal for my green card? That's the question.
No, sorry, I misunderstood. You would not. You would not have had the same outcome that you had. And I
Right.
have friends who, have went to university here, have worked here as journalists and other fields for over 10 years who on green cards who are now in a pending, you know, naturalization process because of all of this. So yes,
Yeah.
and those
Yeah, that's
individuals
why
that
I asked, because the example that you just gave hit me really hard right now, because I left Iran when I was 2 years old. And, Canada and then the US have been my home for most of my life. And if I hadn't applied for I decided not to renew my green card. I just applied for my citizenship in 2024 during Biden. If I hadn't done that then I would be in a very different situation, as you mentioned right now, and it would have definitely complicated things. And right now, my parents are Canadian citizens, and that's the other question that we've spoken about before. They were born in Iran, but they're Canadian citizens, and as an American now, I am able to sponsor family members, but because my family was born in Iran, even though they've been Canadian citizens for 40 years, I won't be able to process their sponsorship right now.
That's right. Yes. And we're only talking about Iran, but the policy captures individuals from or born in 40 countries. I mean, it is so many people who are through this policy being restricted from coming to the States, but also from remaining in the States
Right.
when they've been here in many instances for decades. So it's huge. The impact is absolutely enormous. And I'll walk it back a little bit. That first travel ban the first policy, the travel ban that we discussed, I gave you that example of someone with dual nationality who would be able to interview with their, let's say, French or Canadian passport. This policy then captures those people at an earlier stage in the process and actually prevents them from being able to receive an approved petition. So they would no longer, if they were born in one of the 40 travel ban countries, they would no longer be able to even get to that step. So it's
Yeah, it's really
extremely
devastating.
broad.
You mentioned the 40 countries, and I know we're not going to list them out right now, but Lee, will we be able to post the 40 countries for resources as a follow-up to this conversation on the Waterwell profile page?
Yeah, Waterwell will post some resources helping kind of build on what Kimya is sharing here and putting that information out, which is very hard information. So it's difficult to put out without more context, but there we also see that this is not widely understood, the implications of this, the very, very, very broad implications of this.
Yeah. And I know, Kimia, we've been talking about the travel bans and the restrictions and the countries that are impacted, but we'd also love to understand, from our discussions that the visa process in general, we've talked about the restrictions, and I don't know if there's anything else you want to highlight there in terms of the restrictions, but if you can just talk to us about the visa process and for everybody else, and then maybe we can get into some examples of how that impacts the arts.
Yeah, I'm going to say one more thing about, or two more things about the pause or the second policy that we discussed, the more restrictive one. There is a group of people for whom this doesn't or shouldn't affect, and those are people who have approved petitions prior to December of 2025, and are dual nationals of a travel ban country as well as a non-travel ban country. I just want to say that because it's an important group of people. They still have the opportunity to interview using their non-travel ban country passport, so I just wanted to say that in case there's anyone watching in that group. The last thing I'll say about it is that there's one very devastating additional element of that policy from December, which is that it pauses asylum applications for individuals from any country.
Mm.
And that's absolutely huge. And, there's so much we could say about that. We just don't have the time, and it's not the topic of this. But it's a huge development that's part of this policy. So to move on to the kind of general difficulties of obtaining a visa, in the last couple of years, it has become increasingly, exponentially, I would say, more difficult to obtain a temporary work visa. Already, under the Biden administration, under every administration in recent history, the U.S. has been one of the more difficult temporary work visas to obtain in the world, and it's not easy to come work here, even temporarily, as an artist or a performer. So in the last couple of years, what's happened is it has become increasingly more expensive for individuals. So right now, if you are looking to hire a immigration attorney or law firm to handle your case, which generally advise that people do because it's a very difficult process, on the lower end of the spectrum, I mean, even without the legal services, the filing fees are $530, and as of March 1st of this year, $2,965 for expedited processing. The reason why I mention this is because more and more people are forced to do expedited processing because the regular processing is taking around a year. And if you are a performer or a touring artist or musician, oftentimes the P1 group visa only lasts a year. So if you have applied, the processing time is now eating into your visa requested duration. And by the time you actually receive an approval, for many people, the visa duration that you've requested has passed. So you're forced in many cases to pay this expedited fee, which is around $3,000.
Wow.
That almost $2,400 filing, fee doesn't include legal fees. So if you are hiring an attorney and it's, let's say, on the lower end of market, that's still around $5,000. And that's $5,000 that you may not be able to recoup as a performer, as a musician, as a singer, as, anyone who's coming to participate in arts and culture in the States. One, because you might not be at that stage of your career, but two, we don't pay artists all that much here. So it has become more and more common in my practice that I'm seeing people just choose not to come work in the States and not.
I was going to say, I feel like we're losing the art talent pool from overseas because of this.
Exactly. And that, that goes into the third thing that I was hoping we would be able to talk about today, but it's absolutely massive. And it even impacts the ultra famous, the ultra, successful performers, let alone individuals who are paying out of pocket to, who are hoping to come work here, don't have robust touring plans. You can just imagine the disincentive that all of this presents to artists.
I think, Kimya, you just said something that I want to expand on, because I don't think that people understand how massive this is. And I was surprised when we were talking, you were explaining to me that it impacts, theater groups, and it also impacts, like the soprano who's coming to sing in an opera. But then you also said huge tours like Dua Lipa. So can you kind of explain to us those, those three categories? Because I didn't even think about, oh yeah, like these massive artists that are going on touring, and that also will impact economically. When you think of the big tours, economically, it will impact the United States as well, because like you mentioned, then
Absolutely.
artists aren't going to want to come here to perform, and they won't make America as part of their tour leg.
Absolutely. And I'm seeing somebody in the comments who's also talking about PhD students from Iran who were accepted to Ivy League universities and are not able to come participate in those programs as well. It just captures, I think, how much talent and not just talent. I think it's just how much art, how much exposure to people and culture and perspectives and knowledge, et cetera, that we're missing out on here. But to touch on those three different categories that you mentioned, people like Dua Lipa, Charlie XCX. I mean, I'm thinking of like the biggest sort of pop artists who are born abroad, right? Those are the two that I can think of right now. Those individuals often have established tours with individuals working from their country of origin. So if you're Charlie XCX, your tour is going to be, a lot of British people and people from the UK. That includes not just your performers, your backup performers, but also your crew. That includes everyone that is touring with you. And often those teams are 10, 20 people, maybe sometimes less, a handful. But with these big tours, it could be 200 people, it could be 150 people. All of those individuals have to be on a visa petition. And you can only there's so many different ways in which it's restrictive there. You can only have 25 people on each petition. Each petition has to have its own filing fees, so you have to file those fees that I mentioned separately for each of those petitions, et cetera. And all of that and you also have to prove the eligibility of each individual. This is not an easy process. You need to show that even your crew, that one individual, your lighting person, is absolutely essential to your work in the U.S. So your Charlie XCX, maybe you can afford it, but if you are a group from Mali who's performing traditional Malian music with traditional instruments, and you have one tech person, for example, who is needed because they're the only person that is very aware of your individual instruments, the way that they need to be hooked up, all of the staging, etc. Now, instead of the $5,000, for example, that we were talking about, it's $10,000. And that's anyway, so
That's a lot. It's a lot
it's
for a small theater group. I
oh,
mean,
it's a
or
lot for
the
anyone.
individual sopranoist, right? The one thing I also just with the larger tours that you mentioned, even though they can afford it, maybe the other component of that we've discussed is the timing, right? Because now the processing times have also increased, and
Exactly.
um, right. So you were
Exactly.
saying that it could take up to 13 months to for some of these, right?
We're in
Visas.
completely uncharted territory as far as the processing times. When I started doing this work, it was I was telling my clients that they could expect a response in 4 to 6 weeks, and that was
Wow.
typical. And yeah, and now it's, I'm telling people to expect 8 to 13 months. And
Wow.
like I said, in that period, the duration of your visa could lapse. You could actually receive a response after the requested duration, the period that you requested your visa for has passed. And now you've spent all that money. You absolutely cannot get it back. It's just, you have to put yourself in the position of the individuals going through these processes. And that's not just the artists themselves. Often it's the presenters, the US presenters, who are facing all of this and deciding to take a risk and also place a lot of money in organizing, in planning, in staging productions that might not be able to take place. So we also have to think in the position, as on behalf of the presenters in US organizations, of what kind of position we're placing them in with these policies. It's becoming so risky to try to bring foreign artists here, and you can imagine that a lot of them are just deciding not to do that.
Right. It's such a loss to the community, to the talent community and the art community here.
It is, and it's worth mentioning. if you live in New York, I would suggest, just as a practice, just to sort of grasp the breadth of this, to look at some of the venues that you like in New York. So if you look at St. Anne's, if you look at Lincoln Center, if you look at some of the smaller off-Broadway venues, and see who is performing there. Are there foreign performers? Are there foreign productions? Those are the productions that are, and what I'm trying to say is there are so many, there is so much foreign performance and foreign art in New York and the entire country, that is going to be, it's already impacted, but slowly we're going to see less and less art like this, in the next coming years. And other countries are going to see more. And we just have to, I think, kind of sit with that and grapple with what that means for our place as the US in the global community of arts and culture. If we are not receiving and we are not exposed to as much foreign artists and as much foreign art as other countries, what does that mean for us in the global stage? And how does that impact us, more broadly?
I will say, we've been talking about theater and tours. I just also, from an artist and filmmaker perspective, this is also impacting the film community, producers and production companies that have, and we're in award season now, right? And within the international category, especially for documentaries and international foreign films, this is also impacting people who are nominated and can't get visas to come for award season. Can you talk a little bit about that? I know there was a case we had discussed briefly regarding Nigerian filmmakers who aren't able to come for the nomination ceremonies.
Yeah, and I mean that was because Nigeria, from what I understand, is one of the 40 travel ban countries, and it's not just, there are so many different films and that if you look at the awards season this year, it's ironic to me because I think we actually may have more um, submissions and nominations of films and art from these 40 travel ban countries than before. And yet, while those artists and while their art is being recognized, perhaps more now than in years past, we are now limiting and restricting those artists and their art from being able to actually physically come to this country. So that irony is like, that's, I think, where the arts community needs to, or I hope will realize that if we are making strides towards more inclusivity and diversity and equity and inclusion, but our policies, the country's policies, are going in the opposite direction, how does that impact our advocacy, and how does that impact to me, it sets a ceiling for what we're able to do, and how inclusive and equitable we're able to be.
Kimya, what can we do, me as an individual, if I want to have impact and, if I want to write a letter or are there petitions? Have you heard anything within the community where people can have a voice and have an impact? And if there is an opportunity for me to write a letter or anyone else within the community that is passionate about this, is there, a standard language or a template that you can share with us?
Not that I know of, but it is a great idea. All of the same advocacy that one would do around any sort of policy issue is the same that would work here, or not work. I can't promise anything, but would be the type of advocacy that you should, undertake. So reaching out to your representative. The first thing I actually think in this case would be spreading awareness. I'm pretty shocked. I remain as shocked as I was in the first time that we did this, by how little this is being discussed, how little these policies are being discussed and how little the impact on arts and culture is being discussed. I don't know that people fully grasp the implications of these travel restrictions on arts and culture in the States, and I don't know that people grasp how it's going to impact our position in global culture in the future and in the near future at that. So I would say spreading awareness is primary, um, and also trying your best to get this into the mainstream progressive discourse. I feel like it's missing, and I understand why it's missing, I think, because there are so many other very, very urgent things happening around immigration. But I just want to lift these sets of policies up, even though they don't feel as immediately threatening, to the same kind of level of activism and awareness that people have around other
Yeah.
immigration issues.
And I mean, Waterwell does such an incredible job amplifying these issues and voices. And, part of the reason why we decided to do an IG Live, this is our second one that we've done, is to help amplify these issues. And, for people who weren't able to join the IG Live, this recording will be on the Waterwell profile and collaborated with Kimya and I on our profiles. And we'll continue to amplify and share it. And I know that, Lee, there's also going to be resources that we're going to post after this is over later today or next week. So anything that we can do, Kimya, to continue to help amplify these issues, please let us know. And if there's a template for the representatives, that's something that I would love to do. So if there's a letter that you can help me form or write that I can get out to our representatives, that's something that I think a lot of people would be interested, and it feels like a tangible action that we can take.
Okay, that's great. Yeah, I'll try to get that together and we can send that out to our community. But the last thing I'll say is that, we often rely on the arts in times like this to be the kind of keeper of momentum and mover in making change. And a lot of us really feel in this moment the power of art and in exchanging perspectives and discourse and dialogue, etc. And what I would want to convey in this conversation is that our ability to use art as a maker of change and a driver of discourse, etc., is limited very tremendously if we are unable to actually show art from all over the world and bring in artists from all over the world. So that's yeah.
Yeah. Lee, I don't know if you want to comment or ask any questions before we wrap up.
I'll just say I really appreciate both of your time and your leadership on this issue and being such incredible champions of Waterwell. We're really honored to have you as part of the leadership of the organization. And I think we just invite everyone to be in dialogue with Waterwell about what kind of opportunities you see for community building around this issue and around strengthening the narratives that we're sharing around how to understand the impact of this. And so I really appreciate both of you being here, and we'll keep this dialogue going. So thank you for tuning into Waterwell, and we really appreciate.
I think, Lee, there's the one question we may want to just quickly look at before we wrap up. Kimya, do you see the question?
Yes, Sherry, you can email me. My email is kimya@covey, COVEY.law. And I'll be able to answer that for you there.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Lee, for all the work you and Waterwell does on all of these important issues. And we're, excited to have this platform to be able to share these important voices and help answer some of these questions. And we will hopefully be doing more of these.
Yes. Thank you, everyone, so much. Thank you for being here. Take
care.
Bye,
everybody.
Bye. Thank you.